Hello and welcome back to another episode of Red Tinted Glasses. We are live here on Tuesday night, reacting to the weekend's Desmond draw against Dundee United, and also coming up on the show, we will preview Scottish Cup action as the Dons are 90 minutes away from a possible return to Hampden. Lots to digest on the show tonight. Already lots of comments coming in before we've hit the live button. Phil, what was your? Well, I guess we'll start with the initial reaction to the result, and then we'll deep dive into the game itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think after the fact, it felt like a superb point, just after how the game panned out. But yeah, I think like I put on Twitter, I don't really think we should have let it get to the stage at that point. Felt like a really good result. I just think with the way that the other results had went around us in the league, that it felt like a little bit of a um, shooting ourselves in the foot moment not to come away with the 3 points.
Yeah, it's really weird, and I think Paul Donaldson sums it up a little bit where he says that it felt like a point rescued, but at home against Dundee United, it should feel like 2 points dropped. We've only got ourselves to blame if we only turn up for the last 20 minutes. We'll certainly get into that comment from Paul, I'm sure, on the episode. But it's a weird one because it was kind of a discussion in the pub after the game about I don't really know how to feel because it did feel obviously like a point gained from that position of nowhere about 70 minutes in. But as you said, mentioned results elsewhere, obviously Hibs winning the derby beforehand, it really should have been a game that we looked to attack. But when our first shot on target was the goal that we got back, I think it really summed up where we or how we performed, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, we're entirely to blame, I think, for going the two goals down initially, and I think the image that captured how Dundee United and Jim Goodwin's tactics were entirely to blame for it to come back to 2-2 was captured by our pal Joe, of I think it's
Mm.
Ross Graham lying face down inside the Dundee United 6 yard box after Nisbet scores a second. So I think it's a game of two sides being the architects of their own downfalls in various degrees. But
Hmm.
um, yeah, just a bit of a frustrating one at this sort of, like we said, really what felt like a 6 pointer prior to the match, and at crunch time in the season as well. Should
Yeah,
have really been picking up the 3 points.
yeah, and I think that's probably where a lot of people's frustrations is going to lie is the level of performance and potentially the manager's team selection. I'm sure if you're a Dundee United fan tuning in, you'd be frustrated at Jim Goodwin's tactics. Um, well, we could have said we've warned you about that. And I feel a little bit for Queen's Park, given that Jim Goodwin blamed playing 3 matches in a week, not like we had the exact same 3 matches in a week, but given Queen's Park actually kick off against Ayr United in 10 minutes. I'm sure roving reporter Sam Gordon will keep us up to date on that score. I do have notifications on, but my phone's hidden, so I'm sure Sam will do his best to keep us notified on how Queen's Park are getting on in that game. Um, as I said, the 3 games in a week, Jim Goodwin claiming tiredness played a part, but it was 3 changes for the Dons, maybe to avoid tiredness. Dimitar Mitov returning in between the sticks, his knee not as heavily strapped as last time he played. Graham Shinney dropping back to the bench in place of Ante Palaversa, and Pape Gay also returning to the starting lineup. I guess probably 2 of the 3 changes, not much of a surprise, but maybe the return of Pape was.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, I know that um, obviously Daba was maybe a little bit quieter at Parkhead, which would to be expected, in my opinion. And I think definitely when we saw him come on later in the game, maybe looked like he would have been the better option suited for the match. But yeah, really not surprised to see Meatov coming back in, and Palaversa as well. Although somewhat disappointed with Palaversa's performance. I think I'm usually one to be quite vocal in my praise on this podcast about how good Palaversa is, but that was probably the worst game I've seen him play in a Don shirt. Just and again, probably helped attribute to the fact that although I felt like we had control of the ball, we just weren't really doing anything. Nothing was sticking.
Yeah, the touch of a 5-year-old. in that second half. It's honestly, I've never seen someone, a professional footballer, control a ball so poorly as he did. And I did think to myself, for as much praise as we like to give him on this podcast, he's definitely going to have to come in for some criticism, and I was subsequently hooked not long after that as well. But in terms of Pape, we've spoken on here about him in the number 10 and how I know you've certainly made the fact that he isn't really effective until there's an opening goal in the game, more so for us. But once again, I was so frustrated by his performance. There's another couple of players that you could probably label frustrating, given what we saw at half time with the changes. I just don't understand what he's supposed to bring in that number 10 role. Again, I think the frustration comes, as you said, 6-pointer, crunch point of the season. You're probably looking for players to step up in that number 10. And for me, Willie Miller, I mean, probably a good thing, Phil, that we aren't old enough to remember him from a playing point of view, because I know he's obviously held in quite high esteem. But he was really critical of Kevin Nisbet in that first half, and he also had some questionable opinions on Obde Dabag as well. But I don't understand why Kevin Nisbet was being singled out for criticism in that first half when we had Pape Gay, Jeppe Okos, will come on to him, who were, in my opinion, far worse than Kevin Nisbet. But yeah, I think Kevin in particular comes in for a lot of unfair criticism.
Yeah, I think the thing with Nisbet, and again, it's true for any number 9. They're only going to look as good as the service they're getting, and unfortunately, like you say with Pape, and then as we'll come on to discuss with Ockles, just nothing was working, nothing was sticking. Um, a really, really poor day at the office. And like I say, Ockles is another one that I've kind of been more vocal on the positives of than the negatives. But
Mm.
even I've got to hold my hands up there and say he also didn't have a great game at all. But yeah, Pape's just, it's like I said last week, he's a frustrating player, and I think that's just the nature of him and his style of play. He's very enigmatic. When it works, and it looks brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
When it doesn't work, like it did in that first half against Dundee United, it just has a wider knock-on effect to the game as a whole, and it gets noticed a lot more. Um, and again, as well, it's that age-old thing where you're really either getting a 10 out of 10 or a 2 out of 10 from him. He's not
Mm-hmm.
really steadily putting in those sort of mid-level performances. So I guess the highs and the lows are a lot more exaggerated than elsewhere.
Yeah, and I think, in the second half, he moved obviously briefly to the right wing. Again, not much out of him in that position, but I do think he's better suited on the wing. I mean, you look back to the early part of the season, the goal against Motherwell comes from good wing play. He can stretch his legs out on the wing. He can't really do that as a number 10, and often when he doesn't have the ability to, I find he's tripping over his legs. Or he's trying a fancy flick that really we don't need at that stage, and we lose possession cheaply.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you say, it was just didn't suit him, to be honest. And as we've spoken about, when the opening goal comes, unfortunately for Dundee United, it forces them deeper and
Mhm.
still doesn't give him any of that room that he's needing to operate in that spot. So it really, like I say, just has that wider negative impact on the team, which is unfortunate because, like I say, I like Pape, and I've got no doubts that Jimmy sees him as a key piece to how he wants to play, and that's why he's such a staple in the starting 11.
Mhm.
It just is a really, really frustrating, especially because like I say, it just felt like, especially in that first half, we weren't going to come close to scoring all afternoon. So the fact that whenever we did get the ball sort of up towards him, it was then lost immediately wasn't doing much to calm the nerves around Pataudry.
Yeah, and obviously Daniel Chapman saying that Dante Polvara is going to own that number 10 position when he's fully back. Great to see Dante back on the bench. Obviously didn't get any minutes at the weekend. Interesting on that though, because I thought Obde Dabag and Kevin Nisbet worked well together. Obviously, Kevin kind of dropped back into that number 10 position when Obde came on. But if we are going to go with that one striker, is it a position that we could look to nail down for Dante Polvara in that number 10?
I think so. I think it was something we'd spoken about in the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
sort of at the start of the season. The idea of putting Dante in that 10, getting him slightly higher up. And I think it's a role that he would actually thrive in quite well. I feel he gives us the same sort of asset that Pape does in that physical outball, but also gives us that great technical footballer who's shown on multiple times he's got a bit of an eye for goal and a good range of passing as well. So it would be somewhere that I would like to see him get a extended run once fit.
Yeah, well, someone that might not get an extended stay at Pittodrie, certainly based on the weekend's performance, is Jeppe Ockels. Because certainly at full time on Sunday, I was ready just to drive him back to Preston, and that seven-figure sum that we could potentially pay to Preston is looking very unappealing based on that 45 minutes. I know he's maybe showed glimpses. I know there's a lot of talk around his fitness, but I think it was very telling that both our left winger and left fullback were subsequently substituted off at halftime.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've been quite vocal in sort of my support for Yepe and in the fact that I think there is a player in there, and I still do think there is. Whether it's a player that merits a seven-figure sum, I'm not too sure at the moment. I do feel sorry for him because I feel like if that goal against Kilmarnock was to stand, that maybe would have been the catalyst for him to maybe have that bit of confidence and get going a little bit. But I think after Sunday. Yeah, I would rather if we were going to be spending seven figures on any of that starting front four, it would be Kevin Nisbet for sure. Would rather invest the money there if possible. But yeah, just a really unsurprising afternoon that our left hand side got subbed. I mean, I feel I'm not the biggest Mackenzie guy in the world at the moment anyway. I feel like
Mhm.
his performances have dipped and he didn't look great either, but I think he was up for a little bit of a tough task. 'Cause it felt like any time the ball did go down that side, it was immediately lost, and United just have so much pace down that side that it was always going to be a hard afternoon. But yeah, Yepe didn't do much to cover himself in glory.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's where United had their most success was down that side. So, something had to change. A couple of comments coming in around Jeppe itself. Colin Gale saying he's had enough minutes now to dispel the match fitness point, which I think is fair. And John Kilo asking if there's a play clause in the loan deal because he's gash. But I also wonder again, a lot of people, when we're trying to kind of work out the importance or how good Nielsen was, if it was around the fact that it's a Jimmy signing, and I just wonder if the fact that it's a former player, is there that kind of trust there from the manager and the hope that he rediscovers the form when he had him at Elfsborg? And unfortunately, at this kind of cutthroat stage of the season, we can't rely on hopes. We need to nail down, and I think we saw once we switched Topi Keskinen over to the left, Shock playing a player in the right position actually works. The effectiveness that he brought there, and also the effectiveness when Shaden Morris came on in the second half. Again, we'll come on to that. In terms of that left hand side as well, with Jack McKenzie, I do agree on you saying about playing him when that contract's still not signed. Unfortunately, we're limited in the options there, but we discussed previously Graham Shinnie potentially coming in there. He comes on at half time and I think has a good impact. He, initiates a lot of drive, get that chest pumping back out and, hitting the badge. And there was a bit more fight about us with Graham Shinnie on the pitch, arguably. Could we look at, again, I'm going to say it, starting Graham Shinnie? Yes, you might not get 90 minutes out of him every week, but given our now run of fixtures, okay, possibly coming up against Rangers last game before the split, but I would like to think Graham could at least last 90 minutes against the likes of Queen's Park, St Johnstone, Motherwell, and co coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I say, it's a podcast of me holding my hands up this evening by the looks of things because again, I've been quite a vocal critic of Graham's role within the team. Um, but he seems to have turned the years back with this little switch to left back that's happened recently. Um, so I mean, I'm not against him, make starting there going forward. Like you say, I think the question comes over the full 90, but if you can get a good 70 minutes out of Graham Shinnie, and if he does bring that, like you say, that level of drive and that extra bit of bite to the team, then that 70 minutes might be all that's needed to get us back into that sort of ascendancy in terms of starting games quick and getting ourselves in the lead.
Yeah, well, starting games quick. Actually, playing a whole game quick and at a decent tempo would be welcome for a change. Right, unfortunately, I said if we could be competent in the final third, it would be appreciated. But it also feels like if we could be competent defensively, it would also be appreciated. Because again, we're just not learning. And I don't know about you, but for me, this weekend was the first time I began to get a little bit frustrated with Jimmy Tilleen. Um, and I know it's been a long serving frustration of your zonal marking, but yet again, we fail to deal with balls into the box from set pieces and concede poor goals.
Yeah, I think for me, there was a sort of calamity of errors. There was a few. Um, Again, there was that error error of judgment, shall we say, of still trying to persist with zonal marking. Um, just very daft against a team like Dundee United that have assets like Sam Dalby, for example, who obviously
Hmm.
scores the second. But a physical tall team, zonal marking doesn't work. Um, for some reason, I don't know if it was an issue of vanity, as we saw Walton was quite happy to wear a cap in the second half, but
Hmm.
um, right underneath the sun, Mitov just trying to brave it and blind himself as the ball comes into the box. Also just seemed, in my opinion, far too interested in basically wrestling about his line
Hmm.
um, to really know what was going on. And like I say, the issue of zonal marking just left the United centre half free at the back post with literally nobody around him, and does what you're meant to do and just heads into the ground, and causes even more problems for an already blinded and half wrestled out Dimitar Mitov.
Yeah, Colin's asking, is Mitov at fault for that goal? Are you portioning all the blame on him?
Well, not portion all of it. Like I said, I think a big part of it's got to go zonal marking, but I do think Mitov's got to do a hell of a lot better. He just looks like he gets lost at sixes and sevens and just flaps at it when it does eventually sort of come towards him.
I think the worst thing about the goal as well is whenever a goalkeeper gets beaten at their near post, they're always going to come in for criticism. I think if you watch it back as well, you make a good point about the header going down into the ground, further causing problems. But Mats Knusters, for as well as he's played, kind of thinks about playing at the ball, then leaves it. And I think that distracts Mitov. It's just a comedy of errors from an Aberdeen point of view. And once again, conceding from set pieces. I wish I'd actually looked into how many goals we've now conceded from set pieces, but um, we're certainly not scoring from set pieces because we can barely beat the first man, but we'll come on to that as well. But yeah, to continuously concede goals from set pieces, it's extremely frustrating because it does kind of throw into question what we're doing to solve that issue. And then obviously, yet again, another ball into the box causes problems. Thankfully, Adebayo's offside. Um, I'm just glad he didn't continue to score because having to say his name continuously would have been hard enough on this episode. But yeah, actually do get a little bit lucky because I think there's a deflection, which that's why he's a little bit offside. But the killer for me is with 8 minutes injury time because the game is so stop start in that first half. For all this talk pre-match, it was quite ironic that Declan Gallagher couldn't last the pace. Um, but you know what Sam Dalby's like, and to afford him kind of room to get a header off, but I think it was actually past the 8 minutes of injury time, and you just thought, right, just see it to half time at 1-0. But to go in 2-0, for me, it was just absolutely criminal the way we defended it because I think it was pointed out on social media that they had two men at the corner and we didn't, put enough out there. And they did that the whole game at Tannadice with success. Again, for me, questioning what we've learned in terms of defending set pieces. Are we doing that homework on the opposition? And yeah, it was an absolute killer time to concede that second goal.
Yeah, like I say, I mean, conceding right before halftime. I mean, how many times did we do it on the run, getting goals at the perfect time? Right
Yeah.
before or right after the restart, and it saps the energy out the opposition. I think um, you know, arguably could have done that to us if we didn't make the changes. Um, but yeah, I can't take anything away from Sam Dalby. It was a great header. And, looks to be a really good pickup from a United perspective,
Hmm.
on loan from Wrexham. But again, like you say, there's just things that we aren't learning. They overload to change the angle in the short corner, and we don't deal with it. We for some reason just have this aversion to leaving anybody up top at
Hmm.
corners. And it just allows, again, a really tall physical team like United to just flood the box, which is exactly what they're wanting. Um, just a really sort of frustrating shoot ourselves in the foot moment once again. I think there's just so many simple things you can do um, to avoid the issue coming to a head as it does.
Yeah, because I think that's the thing. It's an avoidable goal from an Aberdeen point of view. As I said, with Declan Gallagher going off, that's one less aerial threat. But they bring on Adebayo, who's just as tall, if not taller, than Declan Gallagher. So it's yet another threat. But yeah, our inability to leave anybody up in the attacking play. Because I think if you watch the Celtic game, I don't think Sky show it as much. But for those that were in attendance, I'm pretty sure Celtic left two players up when they had corners, or we had a corner, so we already had to have like two players out just in case there was a counter attack.
Yeah, I mean it's the exact same thing. For anyone that what has been watching the Champions League, Monaco did it against Arsenal as a complete way to counter Arsenal's sort of potency at set pieces. I'm pretty sure Monaco left four players up because they knew if they did
Mhm.
that, it nullified the threat of Arsenal flooding the box.
Yeah.
Um, and then it's not like we don't have the assets to be able to do that. I'm a huge reason to believe that Keskinen needs to be in that box to mark a zone or mark a
Hmm.
person. I don't know why he couldn't be left up top to at least make them think about keeping somebody back. And that somebody could be Ferry, who I think was one of the people that goes short
Hmm.
to whip the ball in. So it's just those sort of little things that kind of grind my gears a bit.
Yeah. Interesting. This was a topic of debate in the office yesterday. If we don't concede that goal right on half time, as was a hypothetical now, but worth discussing, does Jimmy Tilleen make those three subs at half time, do you think, if we're only 1-0 down?
I think so.
Do
I
you?
think he's got to be honest. I think even outside of conceding that second goal, I think the changes kind of have to come. Mackenzie's to me potentially seems injury based anyway, just off of obviously having gone off injured against Killy, um, and then it seemed like a slight strange one for him to come right at half time, unless he was injured.
Hmm.
Um, but I think Gay wasn't really offering us anything. So I think his change would have eventually come, and I think obviously Ockles as well. Um, just wasn't up for it at all.
Hmm.
And even at 1-0 down, you're still chasing that game and need to do something on the top end. So I still think at 1-0 those two halftime changes would have happened.
Yeah, and I think as well, like as you said, that 6 pointer felt like a must win. That's what we were discussing. I know we'd said how many points would you take from the 5 games pre-split, and you and Calm said 12, 13. So there was going to be a draw in there. That's where we've taken it. So I personally don't know if he would have made all three changes, as you said, maybe with Mackenzie one being injury based, but there was another injury in that defensive line. Christers Tobers yet again picking up an injury and going off. Um, as Graham Gibbs said, it worries him that Tobers thinks he has an injury, and again we're asking him to play on. Obviously that happened at Parkhead, and very quiet on the extent of the Nicky Devlin injury, whether that was concussion based or the shoulder. I mean, not that you know we're short in that area now with Alexander Jensen performing well, but to not even see him in the matchday squad is a bit of a concern.
Yeah, obviously I think Jensen's kind of somewhat made the position his own as of late.
Mm.
Um, but with the fact that Jack Milne's also still out to then also be down Devlin is a little bit of a worry at that right back position. Um, like with Tobers as well, him and Knusters have been putting together a nice little partnership. So
Yeah.
the fact that's again looks like he's gone down with an injury. Similarly to the it's a Celtic game. I'm getting my games all
Yeah.
confused. They
Hmm.
went down with a hamstring injury, and then seemed to play on for a little bit. Um, a little bit of a concern that might be something recurring. I think that the positive to be taken is that I thought Dorrington did quite well when he came on. Um, Again, kind of kept us positive. Was quite happy to come out with the ball and take it to his feet in um, attacking positions. But yeah, like we said, I think getting consistency across that back line is quite key. Um,
Hmm.
so if Tobers is potentially looking to be out for a little bit, that's yeah, not gonna be great for trying to have a settled 11 going in towards the split.
No, it's not, but I think you're absolutely right in terms of the way Alfie Dorrington performed. I've not maybe been overwhelmed by him for, maybe some of the hype that he came with from certainly Spurs fans. But I thought he was, again, one of the more encouraging players in terms of wanting to keep possession of the ball and actually looking to be positive in the sense of driving us forward, as you say, rather than this constant passing along the back line that we like to do with the back four, or recycle the play by playing it all the way back to Dimitar Mitov. I thought Alfie was very positive in that manner, especially in the second half. So for me, positive signs in terms of him coming on. And as you say, yes, it's a bit frustrating in that settled partnership, but I thought him and Knusters looked really good together. And I'm sure if called upon this weekend against Queen's Park, that they'll do the business. Again, I mentioned my frustrations in that first half around Jimmy Talleen and his tactics, and as I said, not learning. For me, again, it played a lot into his comments. Was it post Hibs when he had his rant about the commitment from players and the leadership? And again, we we saw that with the three changes. I felt the likes of Ockles and Pape. I don't know, maybe to an extent Jack McKenzie, maybe did let the manager down, and that was a reaction, you know, to those comments and him saying, right, if you're not going to give me the 100%, you're not playing the second half, and I'll play players that are willing to. Do you think there was a bit of kind of lacking from a lot of the players in that first half? Because again, I go back to the point I made, the fact that we don't have a shot on target in a game that many of us viewed as must win until the 75th minute was, for me, concerning.
Yeah, like I said, it especially that first half, and even leading up to maybe like the hour mark, um, it just felt like there was not a chance we were going to score.
Mm.
We were creating nothing. You know, you look at the stats, and okay, yes, we dominated the ball with 73% of the possession, but we weren't doing anything with it, and I think that was the really frustrating thing.
Mm.
But I think there definitely had to be a reaction from somewhere. Um, Potentially not in the case of the manager being let down. There just needed to be that injection of energy because everything just felt so slow and lethargic. As much as I've kind of praised that Nielsen and Palaversa midfield too, I felt like they just really, really slowed the game down when it didn't need to be at times
Mhm.
on Sunday. And I think bringing in the likes of Daba, who gets himself about, Shinny as well, who will happily get himself about, and then later bringing on the likes of Shady Mo, um, just kind of gave us that little bit of energy that I think was really lacking from the team.
Yeah, and I think, I'm just glad we got the comeback so I can continue the fact that when Palaversa and Nielsen start, we remain unbeaten this calendar year. But I think, a lot of people have picked up on that, the musical box making the same way, a lot of play in that first half that didn't seem to have any real purpose. And I go back to that point, about playing along the back line and then back to Dimitar Mitov. Again, he follows that up by saying that nobody wanted to take responsibility. They all wanted to set things up for someone else. Again, go back to, there was a couple of chances for Topi Keskinen in both halves, especially the first half. I remember thinking, just hit it, but he kept wanting to move on to his left foot and take an extra touch before getting the shot away. I know we've spoken before. Again, another thing that grinds your gears is trying to score the perfect goal. We weren't really looking to take any risks in that first half, and it was extremely frustrating. But as I said, finding ourselves 2-0 down is interesting. I asked you a hypothetical question in the sense that, do you think Jimmy Talleen would make those changes if it was just 1-0? Another hypothetical question comes from Graham Gibb. If the second goal doesn't go in at that moment in time, would Jim Goodwin go so defensive so early? Because, I mean, I couldn't believe it the way they approached the second half. I think someone said it was 42 passes Dundee United made in that second half, and 2 of them came from kickoff from us scoring. But yeah, they just sat in that second half and absorbed the pressure. Just yeah, crazy.
Yeah, I mean, like you said earlier, we could have warned Dundee United fans about that. And again, it's all what ifs, but I do still probably think at 1-0 he's probably still going defensive. That's just the sort of type of manager that he often is. I mean, how many times did we
Mhm.
see it try to sit on a lead, and it just invites so much pressure on yourself. Um, yeah, like I say, I would be probably a little bit gutted because I mean, to be honest, we were there for the taking. Even at the start of that second half, Trapanovsky had a great great chance to get us on the counter to potentially make it
Yeah.
3-0. Um, and you almost think, the quality was there for Dundee United to cause problems. If they just kept on doing it, it wouldn't really have allowed us that foothold back in. I'm just very, very thankful that they did allow us that foothold back in.
Yeah, and I guess that the game does produce a lot of whys. Why does Jim Goodwin sit in from halftime when if he probably takes us on in the first 10 minutes of the second half, could look to kill the game off. But equally, why does it take us to go 2-0 down, especially at home, to start looking to play any form of football? But also, why does it take 5 changes before things finally come off? Again, that's why you'll get folk on the other hand. I don't think Kaiser's watching today, but I know from previous comments he's put on these YouTube videos or lives, he's wanted to see Jimmy Tilleen get more out of this squad. But people will be asking, again, maybe still not got the quite right starting 11 yet.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you could argue that. I mean, conversely, you look at that Michael Wimmer at Motherwell, who's probably working with significantly worse players than Aberdeen have, and just try to make that the sort of best of a bad scenario, albeit, you can argue new manager bounce, playing against a rather inexperienced cohort of Barry Ferguson, Neil McCann, and
Yeah.
Billy Dodds also probably assisted that win. But yeah, I think majority of the signings that have been brought in now are Jimmy signings. I think I was always kind of perhaps using that as a safety blanket of, wait till he gets his own team. A lot of
Hmm.
this is his own team now. Um, he does really need to try and, pull the best out of them that he can. And I think he's aware of that as well. I don't think he would shy from the fact that, he has to pull a little bit more out of them. As we said earlier, the goals he conceded, in my opinion, are quite easy tactical changes to make
Yeah.
that potentially prevent them. So, um, yeah, I mean, by no means am I calling for Jimmy's heads. I've seen some people sort of clamoring for in the back of social media after that 2-2.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think that, like we say, at crunch time in the season, it's you kind of need to step up a little bit, and um, he has to sort of prove that he is the sort of manager that will get us in third, and um, show that the early season form wasn't just a flash in the pan.
Yeah, and I think, as much as I said, like at half time, I was questioning a lot of the commitment from the players. You also have to praise the effort and, digging deep to get that point in the end, especially in that last 20 minutes. And this is why I'm annoyed, kind of listening back to that Sports Sound podcast and hearing the comments from Willie Miller around Kevin Nisbet, because again, somebody in the comments earlier said that for all that he tries, he's become an easy target because he always comes deep. I think it was Graham actually that put that in. But again, we've spoken about it before. He's a penalty box striker. Give him the chances. Okay, we'll excuse some of the misses earlier in the season, but he will score it. And again, listening to Jimmy Tilleen post match, he's delighted for Kevin because the work he's put in to get himself fully fit. He's putting in the extra minutes at training as well, and now we're seeing the rewards. He's sitting now on 9 goals for the season, and it's going to be a debate around Kevin Nisbet if he keeps scoring. Do we go out there and put the money to try and sign him? But Sam Dalby's on loan for Wrexham. If he was cheaper, would you take Sam Dalby or would you take Kevin Nisbet?
See, it's a tough one because I'm obviously, I think, in my opinion, going to take Kevin Nisbet. I feel both of them have a bit of an air of Sam Cosgrove about them, when I feel like they have that purple patch and then that'll be it. Um, they'll then maybe go anonymous for a while. Um, I've got no logic to back that argument up, by the way. This is just a gut feeling. Um, but yeah, you've got to give credit to Kevin. I mean, you can physically see he looks a lot leaner than when he first came in. Um, he looks a lot sharper. He's finally taken those chances that I think we all kind of expected him to be taking when he first came in. And, I always go back to the goal he scored at Dundee and how excited we all got thinking, great, this is exactly what we've been crying out for. And then um, ironically enough, scores a very similar goal um, to pull one back against United on Sunday. Um,
Mhm.
so I feel like both of them will probably be out with the price range. Wrexham are going to ask a stupid fee. Millwall will
Mhm.
probably ask a stupid fee. They're probably both on pretty good wages as well. So um, I can't see us really getting any of them. But yeah, like I say, delighted that Nisbet's been able to find this purple patch.
Yeah, saving grace might be if Wrexham get promoted and then they need to cull half their squad because they're on their way to that. But it'd be cool if Aberdeen could get a mention on Welcome to Wrexham. In terms of, again, the subs, as I said, questioning why it needs to make 5 subs to get us playing. Topi Keskinen looking good on the left, but Shaden Morris, um, making another impact. Again, as much as I say that Kevin Nisbet scoring is going to spark people debating whether or not we should now go on and sign him, Shaden Morris's performance is going to spark debate on should he be starting ahead of Jeppe Okels.
Yeah, see, it's always a tough one with Shaden because like I say, I want nothing more than for him to be started against Queen's Park, St Johnstone.
Yeah.
I think I put up after the game that the team that finished that match against United should be the team that is starting when we come to play St Johnstone in the next league game. I think the problem with Morris is he's kind of struggled a little bit when he has started, and I think that's why we often come back to this sort of idea of him as an impact sub type of player. Um, Again, just against tired legs, he tends to thrive, but I don't think it can be argued that he doesn't deserve that shot in the starting line. I mean, we even said it
Mhm.
after the game at Parkhead, and that really he should have probably been in the starting lineup to reward the fact that he has been put in the performances. Um, so yeah, hopefully he can get a bit of a run because, like I say, Ockles just wasn't offering us anywhere near as much as what Morris did on Sunday.
Yeah, but we always know what we're going to get with Shaden Morris, as I said, the most subbed player in the league this season. But again, providing that impact, providing that spark in part of that comeback. The other substitute I want to speak about as well is Leighton Clarkson, because kind of coming on for was Ante Palaversa, I think he came on for, and playing in that quarterback role to don the phrase that Barry Robson, sorry, put on him. And it seemed to be a position that he thrived in. Again, I think United's tactics played into Leighton Clarkson's hands, allowing him to have that space to spread the ball wherever he wanted. But again, maybe following into the Shaden Morris route, Leighton Clarkson's looking most effective off the bench right now.
Yeah, again, Clarkson's he's a weird one. I think there's games that you could probably circle on the fixture list where you know that he's going to work and he's going to be effective.
Hmm.
And there's games, like we saw going to Parkhead and going to Hampden, where he just kind of becomes a little bit anonymous in the game, um, and really is quite a frustrating watch at times. Again, much like Pape, in my opinion, he's a very enigmatic player. When it works, it works, and he's put in 10 out of 10s. When it doesn't, he's really noticeable at
Hmm.
how poor it is. But yeah, played really well on Sunday. Um, Great at driving us forward, and like you say, having a player like that with that sort of range of passing um, is just brilliant. Putting on a 5 pence in behind a back line, just brilliant.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because Leighton Clarkson was probably summed up really well at the weekend in terms of his performance by the quality of his deliveries. You know, we, as I said, sprays a couple of good passes from time to time, but nothing summed up Leighton Clarkson more than when we get ourselves back to 2-2, we get a corner in the 90th minute, and he then fails to beat the first man with the first corner. It comes back out to him, and the second ball into the box does beat the first man, but the second man clears it. So two attempts to get the ball into the box, failed to do anything with it. As Joe Anderson said, I think he was in more danger from the 6 yard box from the corners. I did really like the header back from Joe as well. I liked how he highlighted his own little highlight reel from sitting behind the goal. I saw Paddy Power's tweet as well saying that players should be docked wages if they can't beat the first man from a corner. I'd hate to think how much money the club would be due back. But another interesting thing that came out for football fans this week was the IFAB rule change ahead of the things coming in next season. How this is going to be implemented in Scotland, given the standard of refereeing, remains to be seen. But it's if a goalkeeper holds on to the ball for 8 seconds or more, a corner will be awarded to the opposition. We must be the only team that will dread being awarded a corner because we'll fail to beat the first man from it.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, Joe was more of a header threat than any of our centre halves were in that second half. But yeah, just seems to be like the story of our season. I mean, I don't know how many weeks we've came on here and berated the fact that our corners are awful. If it's not under hit and not beating the first man, it's massively overhit and looped to the back post where we never seem to have anybody anyway. So it's just
Yeah.
I don't quite get what we must be doing in training in terms of this. I was kind of saying this to people around me. I don't know if the mantra is trying to hit the first post. If so, can we not see that it's not working? But yeah, just absolutely just criminal from us and our inability. So, between docking their wages and the bus gates, I'm sure we'll be able to finance the new Pataudry in no time.
Yeah, can we not get Alan Russell back as well? We used to be good at set plays under him. Um, the other sub I want to pick up on again because, like I said, I really don't know what Willie Miller's problem is sometimes on Sports Sound, but he seemed to question Obday Dabag and what he brought to the team because he doesn't know what he offers. I mean, I don't know what he's judging him on based on 3 games anyway, but I think he provides a handful. He causes problems, he causes distraction, and with him on the pitch, Nisbet found himself in space for the first goal, and I don't think enough is being made of the quality of the finish. Given his record when he's in those positions, how good a finish that is. Also, not enough is being made of the pass from Jensen for that, or the ball into the box for the second. So good 2 assists for Alexander there, but I just didn't understand again the criticism for one of the strikers from one of our former players.
Yeah, again, it's like I say, he gets himself about, and I think he offers you that threat on sort of two levels. He's quick enough to play on the shoulder, and force defenders to take those 5 yards back, um, in the fear of him getting in behind. He's physical enough to hold the play up, um, and also we've seen it when he played against Kilmarnock. We saw it, against Celtic at times when the ball was in their half. He's smart enough and technical enough that he links the play really, really neatly and helps us
Mhm.
get forward. And I think, like you say, it allows Nisbet to not have that deep role and get him in between the sticks, which is where he wants to be.
Yeah.
So I don't. Yeah, Willie Miller's comments kind of a little bit baffling, um, considering again, okay, maybe not as influential in the game as he was against Kilmarnock with a 93rd minute winner, but
Mhm.
um, I think Ode did have a positive impact on the game when he came off.
Yeah, I agree, and he causes a hassle and he's a distraction. And when you have 2 strikers up top, you want defenders to have to think about more than one option that's going to cause a goal. So for me, I personally didn't see what the issue was. Overall, then reflections from the game: is that a valuable point or is it an opportunity missed?
Again, I think on the back of the game, a very valuable point. I think in the grand scheme of the remainder of the season, potentially an opportunity missed. I think Motherwell will be tough, County will be tough. Um, so you were maybe looking at this on our sort of recent form as one to sort of maybe try and pick up early to have a little bit
Mhm.
of wind in our backs going into them. But yeah, like I say, I think in hindsight, it, to come out of that with a point was very impressive considering the first hour of football we had to watch.
Yeah, I think it feels like an opportunity missed overall when you look at it pre-match. Post-match, it feels like a valuable point, certainly in the race for third. Um, I don't know where we pulled that from, and there was an interesting stat that I shared in our group chat last night from DUFC Stats. The last time Dundee United scored 2 goals in the first half came against Hibs in January 2023. And in said game, they went on to draw 2-2 with a brace from Kevin Nisbet. So funny the way history repeats itself, as that obviously happened at the weekend. But yeah, you can always feel when you're at home that it's an opportunity missed. I think you make some good points about the upcoming games. Obviously, St Johnstone fighting for their lives won't be easy. Motherwell fighting for that top six place after their excellent win at the weekend. New manager bounce that everyone seems to get. Obviously, we've thankfully got under Jimmy Tilleen. Won't be easy. Ross County themselves, also in that hunt for top six as well. Won't be easy. And then Rangers, well, they give everyone else a 2 goal head start, so it's probably our only easy game between now and the
Yeah,
split.
I do quite enjoy the fact that at the moment Rangers seem like the easiest of the lot, which is just filling me with great joy.
Yeah, right. Let's go on then to the Scottish Cup. This weekend, the Scottish Cup run has so far been fairly black and white. No, I'm not just talking about the kits, but it's been an easy-ish run. Favourable draws, as most of the other teams will tell you, but 90 minutes away from Hampden. I'm going to start on ticket sales though, because a quick count yesterday, there were still over 5,500 tickets. Up for sale. Quite baffling, as I said, 90 minutes away from Hampden. I think for once, the tickets are reasonably priced, but again, does TV 12:30 on a Saturday deter a few of the fans?
Yeah, I think so. I would like to say that I am not going there. I'm part of the problem. I'm having a weekend away. I've earned it. Uh, but yeah, no, I kind of get it. I think it's always tough as well, especially when we have had this run of sort of lower league opposition in the cup draws. I think maybe a lot of people, people that would maybe sort of come and go game by game, um, potentially not as up for it as they would be should we have drawn a sort of Premiership team.
Mhm,
And like you say, I think the kickoff time and the fact it's on TV as well, a lot of people might just stay at home and enjoy their Saturday morning.
mhm,
Especially, if you're maybe the likes of myself who live in the Central Belt, it's a rather early start for getting up for a 12:30.
mhm.
Um, but I think hopefully the crowd that are there will be vocal enough and sort of back it. I've got no doubts it'll be a somewhat tough game. Ran it close in the League Cup with them already, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think it is going to be an interesting game. Obviously, they're playing tonight, so we've got that advantage of having an extra few days to rest and prepare for the game in comparison. Although I would like to think, regardless if they were playing tonight, that it shouldn't matter. Do you think it helps that we've already played them in cup competition and that was a close game? Obviously, Topi Kestinen scoring the winner late on, so we should know what to expect.
Yeah, I think so, but it's always tough, especially in cup games. Um, Queens Park could come out totally different to how they came out last time. I'm not too sure if they made a couple of January acquisitions since we played them in the League Cup. Obviously, the likes of Ryan Duncan, who's been a bit of a regular in their starting 11, won't be playing. Um, so I think it will be tough. Like you said, I think they'll be coming into it, albeit their league form's been a bit poor, but
Yeah.
on the back of that win against Rangers, um, they've got nothing to lose. I think it's one of those things where we shouldn't really take it for granted based off the League Cup.
Yeah, as you said, their league form hasn't been great since beating Rangers, albeit they've only played 3 games, but hadn't won until the weekend's 4-0 win over Wraith Rovers. So nice to see Barry Robson taking it easy to give them a bit of a confidence boost. But one thing they will take confidence from, I'm sure, is the fact that they've gone the last 2 games with clean sheets, and I've not seen any updates or notifications come through. So currently must be still 0-0 against Ayr United. So, maybe throwing a spanner in the works of the title race. But with Kevin Nisbet being named in the team of the week, I think it was also quite telling that despite winning 4-0, Callum Ferry was named in the team of the week as goalkeeper for the SPFL. And we all saw the performance he had at Ibrox. We saw how well he played against us previously as well. So we know defensively they've got a good keeper, and we've not exactly been the best at creating chances or testing opposition goalkeepers in recent weeks.
Yeah, I think it's again. I think Sam had put a comment in earlier about making sure the keeper's tested in the first half, and I think that's exactly what we need to do with Callum is um, make sure that he doesn't get too comfortable, um, keep him on his toes, and as well, we've seen before there's that potential magic moment in the right foot of Topi Keskinen
Mhm.
from range. So if we can put them under pressure and really assert ourselves on the game, it's the best thing we can do.
Yeah, and I think, as I said, when the draw was made, Callum Davidson is a cup expert by all accounts. They're in the Challenge Cup final, they got out of the League Cup group stages, they're 90 minutes away from Hampden, just like ourselves. They'll take confidence from going to Ibrox and winning, but they'll also take confidence from the fact that they've nearly took us to penalties in that League Cup game as well. Do you think they'll also take confidence from the fact that yes, okay, we've won a couple of games in recent weeks, but we're still not playing 100%. So, do you think Callum Davidson will take confidence from that as well?
Well, I think absolutely. I mean, I think if you watched that first half, he would have been rubbing his hands.
Mm,
He'll be quite happy to give us that level of possession if we're not going to do anything with it.
true.
And you can see that there are frailties there. With balls in the box, with defending corners, that he knows he'll be able to capitalise on. The goal against Rangers comes from a bouncing ball in the box on the back of a corner. Um, so I have no doubts that he's probably watched that. And again, like you say, 75 minutes to get the first shot on target. If we end up doing the same on Saturday, that's his ideal scenario. The longer he can keep it 0-0 and try and nick something, um, or force it into extra time, the
Mhm.
more the cards switch into Queens Park's hands.
And you know, as much as we've probably been critical of the performance against Dundee United on this episode and the fact that it took us 75 minutes to get a shot on target, again, I'm going to say it because it's a cup game and, it only matters about getting through. But is there going to be a part of you, or do you think a large part for majority of Aberdeen fans, that will be looking for some form of performance this weekend? Or is it just get us back to Hampden for the second time this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think a performance is needed in terms of getting that wind in our backs going into this sort of pre-split run of fixtures. Conversely, I think just getting back to Hampden would also do a world of wonders, and if we can scrape by um, with a scrappy goal, um, I'm not going to be too mad. Like I say, it'll maybe leave a little bit to be desired, but um, I think in cup, like we say, Callum Davidson's an expert in cup football, and I think he would agree that getting through is the most important outcome. So yeah, no, definitely just looking for a result more than anything.
Yeah, as long as if we get back to Hampden, we do not face Celtic until the final.
Ideally,
From an Aberdeen point of view, there's, as you already brought it up, there's been a lot of talk about the lineup going into this weekend, and the team that finished the game on Sunday should be the team that starts the game on Saturday lunchtime. Do you expect Jimmy Talleen to ring the changes? Because again, this feels like a catch-22 for the manager. Whereas if you ring the changes and things don't go well, we'll be sitting here next week saying, why did you make so many changes? But also, given the level of performance we've seen from some players, I would probably expect to see a few changes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm expecting a few. I'm not expecting him to really ring the changes, and it might be the first time in a few weeks I can put the Tombola phrase away. You know, I think I can see Shinnie starting at left back. I can see Ockles being dropped, and I can potentially see Gay being dropped once more for Daba. Um, you know, obviously then you've got the potential questions over whether Tobers is fit enough to play the game and potentially bringing in another change, but I can't really see there being too many at this moment. You know, I think, like I've said, the need for consistency is there.
Hmm.
Um, the need for bringing that cohesion prior, to try and drive us into the league form, I think is much needed as well. So I can't see, a wholesale list of changes.
Yeah, I think I've got 4 changes predicted. Obviously, that depends on the Tobers injury. Um, I would be starting Alfie Dorrington. I'd also be starting Shaden Morris this weekend ahead of Jeppe Ockels. I'd like to see Dabag from the start, just give us two up top. And from what we've seen, it's produced goals so far, that Dabag and Nisbet partnership. And yeah, I'd also like to see Graham Shinnian at left back. Again, with the greatest respect to Queen's Park ahead of the weekend, it's the level of opposition that I don't think he should be struggling against. I guess one question that I did have, again, I don't expect it given the importance of the game and how close we are to a cup semi final, was if you're looking to rest players, is someone like Topi Keskinen a player you could argue comes in for a rest and you play a Jeppe Ockels to try and boost his confidence and give Shaden Morris a start over someone like Topi?
Yeah, I mean, potentially, I think there's no doubt that Ockles is needing that little bit of confidence, but at the same time, I think, being 90 minutes away from Hampden, I think we really should be going out with the strongest team possible.
Yeah.
Um, like I say, albeit we, with all with all respect to Queens Park, we shouldn't be needing our strongest team to put in a good performance, but just with the current run, and the fact that I think getting to Hampden will do a lot for the fans and do a lot for the squad. I think strongest team is needed for
Yeah.
Saturday.
Um, John Kelo saying that he could see Ross Doohan back in goals. Do you think that's a possibility, given Mitov's minutes, injuries potentially being managed?
Potentially, I don't think chopping and changing really works. And I think it's around I think you've used the phrase already, catch 22 of both keepers kind of not covering themselves in too much glory this week.
Hmm.
Doing obviously putting in a bit of a poor performance at Celtic Park, and then meet of having um, that error in the first goal against Dundee United. So it's a tough one to say. I think again, I'm an advocate for a little bit of consistency where possible in that sort of back line.
Yeah, and I think if we're going to be changing the centre back pairing, if Tobers isn't fit, I would personally like to keep Mitov in goals, because say that kind of core of your goalkeeper and defensive two have at least played together for a decent chunk of time. But I think Peter Lee's kind of hits the nail on the head. Have to play our strongest team, but I'm not sure what that is. And if we as fans aren't sure, I still don't think Jimmy Tillene is 100% sure either yet.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I think, yeah, I think, like I say, I want to try and think it was the team that ended the game on Sunday. But knowing my luck of saying things on this podcast, that'll be the team that goes out and gets played off the park for 45 minutes before we change it again.
Yeah, and I guess interesting, as I said, about the performance and how much it matters this weekend. Graham Gibb makes a good point. If we can't get a performance against a team from a lower league, because again, I don't think we put a full 90-minute performance against Queens Park earlier in the season. Similarly, against Elgin and Dunfermline already in the Scottish Cup run. He asks, when will it come? Because the list of fixtures tells it's only going to get harder. I think we've already discussed the potential trickiness of the fixtures coming up to the split. But once we then get to that and the race for third really hots up, that will be tough set of fixtures.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think there's any doubts about that. And, it's kind of coming back to what we were saying earlier. I don't think Jimmy's want to shy away from his responsibility to get the best out of this squad and drive that level of performance up. Um, Similarly, I think there's players that should be looking at themselves and sort of questioning why their performance has fallen off for one reason or another.
Mm.
Um, and again, I've got confidence in the fact that I think that will change sooner rather than later. I think there's too much riding on the next few fixtures for anything other than an upward trend in performance.
Yeah, and I agree on that as well. And I think, similarly on Sunday, despite being 2-0 down, I thought the crowd did a really good job of sticking with the team and staying with them. And, again, Jimmy Tilleen picking up on that, how much the crowd really pushed on. And I think, as you said, despite obviously there still being a number of tickets left for this weekend, the crowd will stick with the team and hopefully get us across the line, and we'll be off to Hampden in April for the semi-final. I'm just trying to remember when that date is. Hopefully it's not the weekend before Player of the Year, because that could make for an awkward Thursday night at the P&J for us.
Yeah, ever so slightly, but nothing that the 2 or 3 bottles of wine that me and Callum went through won't fix.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we actually might put out another raffle for one of the seats on our table for Player of the Year. Do what we've done the last few years and raise funds for Life Stars on the back of that as well. So stay tuned to our socials for that. But I think for this week, that is that. We've digested, gone over, and hopefully helped maybe those of you that found Saturday really frustrating feel better, and hopefully set you up for the weekend's Scottish Cup counter as well. So hopefully when we're back next week, we've got a semi-final to look forward to, and then it's a trip to Perth before the international break as well. So the big games keep coming thick and fast. So if you are a fan of the podcast on YouTube, remember to hit that subscribe button, like this video, comment your thoughts down below as well, and follow us on your audio platform of choice. Get those notifications on so you never miss an episode as well. Until next time, thank you very much for tuning in.